Good evening, afternoon, people.
Could be anytime.
Yeah, it could be anytime. It's our fucking
It's a
podcast.
podcast. It's a
So
podcast. They could be listening anytime.
I mean, it's like I started the people things I did on my TikToks. Hey, Mike, how you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. I just have one thing to say. Somebody came in the comments the last time we did a show like this, and this is called Taking a Break or
Yeah,
Take a Break with GenX Jace and Boomer 2. Somebody says, well, I came here expecting to hear about the news, and I heard about this. Look, it has a different name. We've explained this a number of times. And this isn't replacing
no,
anything I do anyway. This is extra.
yeah,
And all I said to this person is, look, I do a podcast about politics every day. I do 5 to 10 TikToks every day. What more do you want me to fucking do? I need
yeah.
a break too. So we sit and talk with Jace about things other than politics.
Yeah, you got to do that, man. Because I mean, life's more than politics. I mean, yeah, I know where a lot of shit's going on and everything like that, and some people don't want to. Well, I can't do that. You got to, man. I mean, you got to. I mean, there's an old saying. Actually, today's I don't know if you saw my TikTok, the 135th birthday of the legendary Groucho Marx.
Oh, wow.
He's been dead for more than I've been alive, just about. But there was a thing on there when it kind of goes back to what we're talking about is you can always have too much of something. It's like he was on it's your life, you bet your life. And he had a girl there and she had 8 kids. And he goes, 8 kids, huh? And she goes, yeah, I really love my husband. And he goes, yeah, I love my cigar, but I take it out of my mouth every so often. I mean, you gotta fucking take a break, man. That's why you came up with taking a break. And I want to welcome everybody. Let's do this again. Taking a break with GenX Jace and Boomer 2.
Well, and I want to tell people, people will kind of decide who you are by what they see on YouTube or TikTok or whatever. And you might be led to believe that all I talk about all day
Yeah.
is politics. The podcast takes about an hour and a half, 2 hours every day. And I do TikToks and I maybe spend about an hour total time doing the TikToks because I do them pretty straight away. Other than that, I really don't talk about politics unless somebody is asking me about it. I don't let my whole life be controlled by politics. I have issues with it. I have perspectives with it. I have opinions of it. But, when my wife are going out to dinner or we're going to hang out with our grandkids, it doesn't come into play. I don't agonize over politics all day, every day. And neither should anybody out there. You need to have some fun. You need to fucking live your life once in a while.
Yeah, there was another comment too by I forgot it was besides her, it said something about, well, I'm not gonna take a break, I'm gonna keep fighting. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, we're all doing that right now. I mean, yeah, you can get upset with it and you can, be pissed off about that. But 9 times out of 10, we're in this reason is because people don't vote. That's especially in Texas. And I sent you something on there that how we got a really good candidate right now that's raising more money than ever. And I know we're not getting the politics, but I mean, it's like you can be pissed off all you want to, but if you don't vote, it's all for naught. You can just sit there and be
Yeah.
mad. You got to fucking vote. You can show up to the party, have the barbecue, have beer at Beto. You don't show up to vote, and that's what they're counting on, you not voting. So, it's a war, but I mean, take a fucking break too. I mean, you even go to bed at night. I mean, ain't like you work all day. So, this is the fun part of what it is. And that's why I kind of do my TikToks. I don't really do politics and stuff on my side because, you do your thing and you reach a lot of people. I'm trying to do it to say, hey, there's something more to this. And, and I'm a firm believer that everything will work out like it should. I mean, if you believe God will make it happen, but I'm 9 times out of 10, it's never as bad as we think it is. I mean, sometimes it could be worse, but 9 times out of 10, it works out the way it should. And I believe what we're in right now, it will too.
Well, I just put it this way, doing the podcast every day. Nobody does a podcast every day, but I do. A bunch of TikToks every day. And I've been doing this for 5 years. Don't tell me I'm fighting, not fighting, or quitting fighting. I'm fighting as hard as I can given what I have to deal with. Anyway, let's talk about something less. I've got another podcast I'm going to record later today that will be about politics. And we're going to get away from that here and talk about something more interesting or at least entertaining.
And it'll be another bald man. So just saying. So we're talking, we're texting and everything. Had this idea about the podcast to kind of about, especially since you had working in the radio, and I was doing our last kind of teaser that it'll be a good podcast because Mike's worked in radio and I listen to the radio. So he's had
There you go.
stories. He's had stories that he's told me. I mean about living in Minnesota, worked where Prince is at. And what I kind of want to talk about for the Gen Xers and people that were really into music in the 90s, and it just hit me by surprise. I didn't realize it, but 1992, it was a release of Alice in Chains' second album called Dirt. And Alice in Chains was probably one of the first grunge bands. To me, my favorite grunge band. They came out of Seattle out of nowhere, and they were more hard rock and metal. But they had an album called Dirt, which is and it came out in 92.
Hmm.
And I did a TikTok on it, and it just like, I went to go see that concert and back in October. It was Ozzy Osbourne's first show back in San Antonio after he pissed on the Alamo. I think that was around 86, and it was like 6 years later that he came back, and I got to go to the first show. Well, I was like, of course, Ozzy was smart because he got the younger bands. Like there's a song, a band called Blind Melon. They had that song, No Rain, with a little bee girl out there dancing. That was a big hit.
Right.
They were opening, and then Alice in Chains in the middle, and then Ozzy. And Sharon Osbourne's very smart. She gets, hey, let's bring the kids in. They'll fucking want to see Alice in Chains, and Ozzy's always been relevant. So me and my buddies are there. It's 20 years ago. It's what 30 years ago. So what 1992 was that 20? How was that? How many years ago was that? A long time ago. And I like 20 years old, and me and my buddies are sitting around, smoking cigarettes, checking out the chicks. And this guy comes up to me. He bums a cigarette from me. And I had no freaking clue who he was. And of course, my buddy's giving me shit. It's like, what? You're fucking Mr. MTV, man. You're always watching that shit. And you don't know who this is? Grunge was different because grunge, they walked around. It wasn't like Paul Stanley or Stephen Percy. They didn't have the big fucking hair and the two or three chicks by them. They were the guys that looked like they just mowed your lawn or, washed your pool or cleaned out your pool.
Right.
That was for Seattle. It was the whole thing. It was the whole, yeah, we had the fun in the 80s. Now we're going to be all fucking depressed. And I hated that shit because I like bands like Def Leppard and Kiss and enjoyed it. And these guys were my age. And there was like, only thing that came out of Seattle was coffee and depression. That's how I
Yeah.
felt.
Yeah. Pretty much. Pretty much.
But he bought a cigarette from me, and we sit there and we talked about other bands because it was 92. Grunge is just, I mean, Nirvana just blew up, Pearl Jam, but Alice in Chains was one of the first ones. We sit there and talk the shit. And just, he came up again, done another cigarette from me, and just a normal dude. He was, I mean, and I guess like everybody else, he didn't know who he was. But I mean, I don't know if you've ever kind of faced that with somebody who should have been a dick or a diva. And you probably experienced this a lot living in Minnesota, but I mean, have you ever come across somebody that, you actually have a positive thing about meeting somebody
Well,
famous?
I had a lot of positive things. Who was the person you talked to though?
His name was Mike Starr. He was the original bass player for Alice in Chains. He, God, he was a little bit older than me. I think he died at 40, 46. But he got on that Dr. Drew, who was on that Love Line with Adam Carolla. He was that doctor that helped these people out, which I don't know, it didn't never seem to help people out because they always die. He died of
Yeah.
a drug overdose because you listen to a lot of Alice in Chains stuff, their lead singer died. So, I mean, I mean, they lived their life of depression, but yeah, he was like 40, I think, when he died in the late 90s. But I mean, I saw that and I was, it was sad to see that a lot of you see the Mick Jaggers and the, Steven Tyler's, of, the boomers, they're still fucking around. But you look at the Gen Xers, Kurt Cobain, Lane Staley from Alice in Chains, they're all gone.
Yeah.
It's like Dave Grohl and Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam. That's about it.
Yeah. Pretty much. Well, there is somebody I met that at this point in time you would think was an asshole, but he was a wonderfully nice guy. And for me to say he was a wonderfully nice guy at that time might be a little controversial. This was like 77 or 78. I'm a teenager, but I'm working in radio. I'm a stringer. I'm getting interviews for people, other radio stations around. I'm going to sporting events. Well, there's this football star that's coming to town, but not to play football, but to promote a product that made sense for this guy. And there was a press conference where he was going to sell this product to the press. But this guy was a huge star. So I said, fuck yeah, I'm in. I don't give a shit about what he's selling, but I want to meet this guy. I want to meet this guy at first for the first time. So I set up and I'm going to go to the press conference and I get there. And at this press conference, like in 77, 78, something like that, OJ Simpson comes to the press conference. And not surprisingly, he's promoting some orange juice brand, OJ orange juice and stuff like that. So he gives up there and gives his little talk and does what he does. And I had this girlfriend at the time that loved OJ Simpson. So I really wanted to get to talk to him individually, which I did. I said, Mr. Simpson, could I ask you a few questions? And he sat down with me and we asked a bunch of questions. And then I did something I never would do, never, ever would do. I asked him for his autograph, but not from me, for the girl. I thought, this is fucking perfect. I'm going to get OJ Simpson's autograph for this girl. I'm in. So I tell him the circumstances. I said, I don't normally ask people for your autograph, but I do have this girlfriend. And he looks at me and he goes, is she cute? I go, of course she's fucking cute. Why would I date her if not? He says, why didn't you bring her along? And I said, because see, here's the deal, Mr. Simpson. If I brought my girlfriend to this press conference, then you would have a new girlfriend and I would have no girlfriend. He looked at me and goes, good point. But I sat and talked to this guy for a long period of time. He was very, very nice. Probably the nicest guy I'd met up to that point, because there's some dicks too, but he was very nice. Then, of course, 17 years later, it's 1994, and the world's opinion of OJ changes. So when I met OJ,
Yeah.
he was cool. He was a nice guy to me. He didn't have to be nice to me. I was just a kid, but he was good. Little did we know he had a dark side.
Yeah, when you tell me that name, was he selling Ginzu knives? Oh, that's poor taste. So.
And no, orange juice, some orange juice brand, of
I
course.
remember OJ. I mean, I remember growing up with OJ, and what was it? The Avis or what Hertz when he'd run through the airport back when you could run through
Hertz.
airports. Remember those days when you could run through airports and you didn't have a little TSA waiting there? He tried to run through the airport. Now I get tackled. Yeah, OJ, and
Especially being black.
yeah, yeah. Everybody had a good opinion of him. I remember when he was in the Naked Gun movies. He played Norberg. He was, I mean, with Leslie Nielsen and George Kennedy. I mean, those were hilarious. And it's funny that you bring up OJ is because I have a story that kind of ties to OJ Simpson.
Really?
Yeah, the one of the stories I have ties to OJ Simpson, but I want to get to that later because I want to talk about another
Okay.
one that I had.
I will just say this about OJ Simpson. For those of you who are too young, you have to understand at that moment in time, OJ Simpson was the greatest running back we'd ever seen in the NFL. Nobody had even come close. He had a 2,000-yard year when we had 14 games in the season. So this fucker was good. He was amazing.
But we all know who the greatest running back of all time now is, though. We all know that, that's Emmitt Smith. And I got to say that because I got to live in the past with the Cowboys. So just saying.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, OJ played for the Buffalo Bills, right? Didn't he? And
Yeah.
like
And
that
San
trial,
Francisco, I
that
think.
trial, that trial taken, he played for San Francisco? Really? That must
Yeah,
have been,
toward the end of his career when he was pretty well broken.
it's kind of like what, who's the guy that, Vince Lombardi, didn't he? My buddy told me he coached Washington. And I was like, I didn't know that. I always thought it was Green Bay. And I think that was him. And
Who?
I think Vince Lombardi, I think he coached Washington after Green Bay. And you just,
Yeah, yeah, he may have. He may
yeah,
have.
yeah, it's these players like Joe Namath. Didn't he go to another team after the Jets after that one hit wonder that he had?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think he went to LA. I think he went to LA. But you know what? Joe Namath, he was more famous and Hall of Famer type for his image than he was his play. If you looked at his play, his passing percentage was like 53%. He had more interceptions than he had touchdowns. And toward the end of his year, his career, he had these broken legs and he was horrible.
Yeah.
Um, cool guy, big star, but he was not a great quarterback. Certainly not by today's standards.
OJ Simpson too. What pissed me off about it is, and it still gets me about that with it kind of goes like Pete Rose. It's like, what he did on the field should be separate than what his personal life is. because you had all these people when that, he got with going through the murder. They went took his Heisman out of the freaking Hall of Fame. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, he didn't kill anybody on the field. And like we were talking earlier, you got to learn to separate politics from, the action. You got to recognize, and I know people may disagree with me, but I've always looked at it like I'm a big St. Louis Cardinals fan, and I loved Mark McGuire. And what him and Sammy Sosa did, they saved baseball. They brought people like me back that, I was a Royals fan and I followed them. And then like in the 90s, they had that big run. So what happens, of course, everybody, glorifies them. Barry Bonds too. Barry Bonds is still the greatest hitter. I mean, no offense, but you still got to hit the damn ball. And
Yeah.
but so now we have it's kind of like, you have this newer generation, they're judging the older generations by like how it was. Like, no, well, that's how it was back then. I'm not excusing it, but that's just how things were back then. And you're shaming somebody by today's standards with them, and I've never agreed with that. That's what the Hall of Fame does. They put Pete Rose in. Now he's dead, they're thinking about it. And but OJ, they took his Heisman out. They should have leave that stuff alone. The stuff that happens on the field is separate from what happens out there. Yeah, he was a bad dude, and I believe, he did it, because the whole glove thing, and but was there? I mean, the LAPD fucked up. I mean, plain and simple. But I mean, they shouldn't have taken his Heisman out. I don't know if you agree with me on that, but that's just stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, as people get older and they do weird things, you're different people at different times. I will say this about, what was I going to say? Pete Rose.
Yeah,
They're talking about putting him back in the Hall of Fame, and people are saying, well, they banned him. You know what the loophole they're working on is? They banned him for life, and he's no longer alive. So they think they can put him in the Hall of Fame now that he's dead.
they were gonna. Well, that reminds me of the guy that. Did you hear about? Nothing, nobody famous, but there was a guy that was on death row, and I guess they gave him the shot, and I guess for some reason they sometimes bring you back. Well, he survived the death row, and his next thing was, well, I mean, I technically died, so I should be released. I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, I mean, I'm like, guy's got a point, you know what I mean? But yeah, that's just it's politics. So why some people aren't in the Hall of Fame? It's like the rock and roll. There's always politics, You have some bands that they're, only so many members are, but you have Bruce Springsteen's band over here. It's got the tambourine player in that he eventually married. I
yeah,
mean, it's just politics, and and it's what gets me now is that baseball, it's all about betting. I mean,
yeah.
you can bet on I mean, it's not even legal here in Texas, but I see, Cash Kings or whatever all the time. It's that whole thing where, slip me a couple, I'll turn the other cheek. I mean, it's what they say, but baseball's built on that now. And they get these players, they put these players that play for the Raiders in Vegas. That's like, putting a sex addict in a freaking, brothel. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it makes no sense. It's like it's that whole thing to where, don't do this, but we can do this. I mean, I just never agreed with that. But
For
yeah,
for all the for all the years I was growing up and watching sports, they would have never put any sports team in Las Vegas because of how it would look, the optics of it. And
oh
now
yeah,
we can see things have changed. Now we've got football and hockey and all this other stuff. You mentioned Barry Bonds, and I wanted to bring up somebody I met who was an absolute asshole.
I bet he
Now I
was.
never now I never met Barry Bonds, but he seems like an arrogant motherfucker.
Oh,
And if he was an arrogant motherfucker, he comes by it honestly. Because who I did meet on the field at Met Stadium prior to the game was his father,
really?
Bobby Bonds. That was a militant, angry motherfucker. He was hard to deal with. Now, he wasn't as good as Barry Bonds, but he was a decent player. He was a utilitarian play. He played a lot of positions, but I tried to interview that guy. What a dick. I stopped it in the middle and I said, look, if you don't want to talk, I'll just go talk to Sal Bando or some motherfucker.
Yeah, I did a interview. I had a good friend of mine that was in local radio. They were Kiss Radio, which was big, like in the 70s. One of the guy,
Yeah,
Joe Anthony, he was the Godfather. He discovered like he really pushed bands like Rush and Judas Priest. I mean, Kiss was known nationwide back then. I mean, you know that. You remember
yeah,
on the radio. But his name was Steve Hahn, and they did Lyle and Hahn down here. They were a morning show, And I was in college, and my boss at the time knew Steve Hahn. He'd come in. I go, "Hey, you think I can interview Steve Hahn for college?" "Oh yeah, cool. Come on in." So I went up there and I watched him do the show and stuff like that. And Steve was kind of that self-depreciating, guy that, and he was telling me, it's like, you know what, I'm not much to look at, but Italian radio, man, especially like local radio, and the babes come, some of the babes come. And he was telling me that he says, man, I've interviewed a lot of people. I've interviewed Michael Jordan. I've interviewed Steffi Graf. Uh, nice people, just really cool people to me. The ones that are the worst are the mid-level bands, like mid-level people. Like there
Yeah.
was a band in the late 80s called Warrant. They had a number one hit with Heaven. Sounds just like Boston. They had a good run. He said, man, they just thought they walked on fucking water. But he would go
Yeah.
interview Robert Plant, and Robert Plant, to me, could cure cancer. That's how much I look up to the guy. But you have these like mid-level, it's like wrestling, these mid-level Carter guys that have a good run, but they think they're bigger than anybody. And he said that he always ran into that, the bands that weren't quite that big, that really thought. But he said the people that he interviewed the most, like Michael Jordan, Steffi Graf, and he told me that in an interview that they was always the cool people, the most laid back, which explains Mr. Bonds' dad there. Not that his son would have been any better.
Yeah. No. And most people I ever met were relatively decent people. I mean, I grew up with a guy who was part of a group that you might even call American heroes. Uh, and he was part of the 1980 Olympic hockey team that won the gold medal.
Oh wow.
His name is Mike Ramsey, and I grew up with him, junior high school, high school. We played sports together and all that stuff. In fact, I talked to him one time, long since all this stuff happened with the Olympics and the pro career and stuff like that. And I said, Mike, you got to admit your greatest memory in sports has to be the fact that you and I played on the sophomore Roosevelt High School team. We went undefeated and won the city championship. That has to be the biggest memory for you. And he looked at me and goes, yeah, pretty much. but he played in college for a year. They won the national championship. He went to the 1980 Olympics. Herb Brooks was the coach, was also his coach in college. I remember the story. I'm sitting in my room with my brother, and Mike Ramsey comes over to the house to tell us he's going to be on the Olympic team.
Oh cool.
And he comes in, and we're both sitting there. And he goes, Maury, guess what? I made the Olympic team. I go, that's awesome. And we're talking about it a little bit. And my brother asked the question, "You think you can beat the Russians?" And Mike looked at me and goes, "Fuck no, there's no fucking way we're beating the Russians," and which would have been the correct answer. And I said, and I said, well, at least you might have the chance to meet Linda Fradiani, who was the hot girl skater that was
Oh
going
yeah.
to the Olympics too. But we sat and talked about it for a bit. He was excited about being on the Olympic team. Then you take it ahead after that. The one story, because we were good friends. I mean, we hung out together all the time. We worked out together and stuff like that with another friend of ours who also played minor league pro hockey. Um, but on the day of the draft, he was the NHL draft, and I can't remember what year it was. It might have been 77. It might have been 78. It might have been 79. I don't know. Um, but it was before the Olympics, and I'm a reporter, so I have a press pass to get into press boxes and stuff. And um, there is a draft event at the Minnesota North Star offices. You know, the team you motherfuckers stole from us that's now in Dallas. But this was the Minnesota North Stars. So we're watching this and we're hearing about the draft. And my friend Mike gets drafted number 11 in the NHL draft. This was the highest any Americans ever been drafted that ever at that point. It's changed now. So I immediately see he's drafted by the Buffalo Sabres, number 11, highest ever. This is big news. So I immediately call Mike Ramsey and I say, hey, Mike, guess what? You were drafted by Buffalo, number 11, highest drafted American ever. He goes, are you sure? I go, dude, I'm sitting in the North Star offices. Yes, I'm absolutely positive. Number 11. That's fucking awesome, dude. He goes, that's incredible. I can't believe that. And he says, dude, I got to tell you something. I go, what's that? He says, I knew this yesterday. I go, you motherfucker. You knew it yesterday and you let me go through this whole process. Well, nonetheless, he goes on to play with the Buffalo Sabres for 16, 17 years and um, was pretty successful. He was an all-star a few years, but one of the greatest guys you'd ever meet. You'd think that because he was a big athletic stud that he would have been big man on a campus in high school and college. He really wasn't. He was he was kind of naive and we teased him a little and he teased us a little. He was just a great guy. He was one of the guys I would say that I'm most proud of because I knew him from the time we were little and we played sports together and he went on and did some amazing things and now that he's retired, still the same guy.
They that a lot of people don't realize is when they talk about that game is it wasn't even the final game. Wasn't it like a playoff game
No,
or something? Yeah.
yeah, the Russian game was the second to last game, and I think it was Sweden that they played the championship with, and that's where we won the gold medal. But beating Russia, shit, if we hadn't won the gold medal, that would have been enough.
Yeah, because back then it was the whole Russians were even in wrestling they had that where they like we were talking about the Koloffs that were from Minnesota,
Yeah.
Peter Koloff, and I remember watching wrestling as a kid. And that gets me to our next story. Uh, I always thought Russian men were all bald because you had Ivan Koloff was bald, you have Khrushchev that was bald, but 2 weeks later he was the Repo Man. I mean, it's like you
Yeah,
watch that. But growing up in Texas in the '80s, the Von Erichs were kings. I mean, you probably heard of the King
of
Von Erich.
course.
They were.
Yeah.
There was a movie that came out a few couple years ago called The Iron Claw. It gets a lot of shit wrong, but it's really good. I didn't really know much about wrestling, but my buddy neighbor brought me over there, and he liked the Von Erichs, and I always liked Kevin. Kevin's the one that's still alive, and he's the one that wrestled barefoot. Well, they had a thing here to where my mom at the time worked for Southwest Airlines, and my grandmother lived up in Dallas. So what I would do is like, Saturday morning, I'd fly up non-rev to Dallas, and I'd hang out with my grandmother. In Dallas, they had their own program every Saturday night. It was like 2 hours of wrestling on local channel. And I was in fucking hog heaven, man. And she had and it was weird when I go to Dallas before cable really took over, you had these things called territories. So wrestling
Right.
would be all around. You'd have the AWA and and I grew up with world class, but hey, there's Mid South, there's the AWA there, and of course the WWE with F, which was, the big dogs, or they thought they said they were. I was always a Ric Flair guy. So around the time Mike Von Erich, one of the younger sons of the Von Erichs, he got a shoulder displaced, and well, they already had tragedy. David Von Erich was one of the oldest. He had died mysteriously in Japan. Mike Von Erich, if you're not familiar with him, he looked a lot like David, red hair and everything like that. Well, he got a shoulder injury and got toxic shock. So
Oh,
they
wow.
they showed him, and he just looked like a freaking zombie. And and a lot of this, I think it was in the movie, but Fritz was really the thing to where his boys were his meal ticket, and a lot of people blame him for push. He went back too soon. Well, he disappeared. He came back and he disappeared, and they did a thing looking for him. I was so freaking, and then I remember watching the news. It was in the summer, and they were saying, "Well, their body's been found up by a lake or something," and it was him. He offed himself. He killed himself. And I remember being so interesting. Like, I bet it was that Dan Gino Hernandez did it, because we didn't know it was, these guys fucking hate each other, right? Okay. So one day I'm getting on Dallas. I'm gonna go see my grandmother, and it's right after this happened. And there is this wrestler. You can Google him right now. His name is Jeep Swenson. This motherfucker was huge. No missing this guy. And if you ever saw Batman and Robin with Irma Thurman, he had
Uh,
that character Bane, the real big muscle guy. That was him
right.
in that Bane. But he was going up there, and he was at the time with this old wrestler called General Skandar Akbar, which was like supposed to play an Arab, but he was probably from Wisconsin or something, but he was
Yeah.
brown. And and I was a kid. I was, God, 1986. I was what, 13? 13, my 13, yeah, 13 or 14. And he was supposed to be a heel. And and you see a picture of him, you don't fuck with that dude. I mean, he was a big old guy. And I go, hey man, and he says, you're the wrestler, right? And he sees I'm a, kid and I'm nervous and stuff. I go, yeah. It's like, man, that's sad about Mike. And he goes, yeah, man, it's a fucking tragedy. They're a great family. And this is, 1986, granted, when kayfabe's going on, he probably would have been fired talking to this kid, about that. Just a cool guy. And I go, man, I'm a real big fan of your work. And he kind of looked at me and he goes, really? And I go, yeah, I like heels. And he goes, just keep watching. I like bad guys. I mean, because good guys are boring, and all the chicks like the bad good guys. I like, the guys that would beat stuff up. But another guy, maybe it's me, Mike. Maybe I'm the curse. You know, another guy that died, but he died at 40 of he died at 40 of heart failure. And if you look at him, you can see why. I mean, the guy was just a fucking roided up guy. He admitted. I saw him on TV years later admitting to it. But nice guy talking to a kid. Shouldn't have been talking to a kid at a kayfabe. But that was another guy that, you would think be a real dick because, a lot of those guys stay in character, but this guy was really cool. And it was really sad that, you could tell that the Von Erichs meant something to him because, they gave him a job and everything and, talking about it. But that's another guy that was really cool to me. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
It was a tragic story. I saw the movie too, and I didn't know as much about the Von Erichs. I knew who they were, but it was an interesting story, and what a tragedy after tragedy for the family. I think I told you one time that I was a big wrestling fan when I was a little kid. Then I wasn't. Then my kids got
Yeah.
to the age where they were into wrestling, so I've been kind of in and out of it.
Yeah.
But
Same here.
I had a friend of mine, one of my best friends. He played football at Morehead State. Okay, and he had like three or four roommates, all pretty decent guys except one. Um, and uh, one of them was a guy by the name of Joe Laurinaitis. And Joe, you better know him. You know him better as Animal among the Road Warriors. He seemed like he looked like a crazy motherfucker. The other one was
His,
Koloff,
his brother
not
wrestled.
Ivan. No, they weren't related. This was his name was Scott Simpson, is what his name was, and he was just an arrogant dick,
He,
and he ended up being this Koloff guy in wrestling.
I guess
He
he's a
did
cool.
he did reality show, but the funny thing about it is we'd go up there and hang out with my buddy. He was a big guy in his own right, and Animal from Road Warriors would be hanging out with us. And every time you'd go to bars in Moorhead, if they saw new guys that they didn't know, you'd get some of the locals. Um, some of the locals start trying to start shit with us because we're in there poaching their girls or drinking their beer or whatever. There was one occasion we're all sitting in the bar, we're goofy and we're drinking, and we've had our share of fights in our life. Then there was a guy sitting kind of in the middle of us on the bar, and he's giving us shit. And so we're just kind of, we're not scared of this guy. We got four guys. And then Joe comes by and he sees, Animal comes by and sees this guy giving us shit. He looks at him, he goes, "Are you giving my friend shit?" And the guy goes, "Oh, no, no, no." He said, "I heard you giving my friend shit." And he literally picked him up by the chin and body slammed him on the floor. Now, after that, we never had any trouble. After that, we were pretty welcomed into the situation. It was crazy. And then I got to tell you this story too, because later on we went to a Super Bowl party, and Animal, Joe Laurinaitis, was there with my friend, and I kind of knew everybody, and I was just engaged. My wife and I were there, and we were separate in the party because my wife knew some of the people too from my friends and stuff like that. Well, Joe wasn't married yet, and Joe was kind of hitting on my fiance, not knowing.
Yeah.
And somebody comes up to me and goes, "Hey, that's Mike's fiance." So totally respectfully, he comes up and he goes, "Hey, Mike, I just," he says, I didn't know. Honestly, I apologize. I shouldn't have done that. And I didn't know. And so I thought this is a good time for a joke. Here's little old me, and there's Animal standing there. I go, "You did what, you motherfucker? You want to take this motherfucking outside?" And he's just looking at me. He goes, "No, man, I'm cool." I
God.
go, "I'm joking with you. I'm not going to fight you.
Yeah, yeah, I'm
If
gonna
you want to
say,
date my fiance, you're cool."
yeah, the Road Warriors, man. There was another TikTok I did the other day. It was the Road Warriors. It's funny. I thought Hawk and Animal were from fucking Chicago. That's what they said in wrestling. That's another lie.
No,
And
they're from Minnesota.
Animal was my. I like the Road Warriors because they were just they were you when they came out. I mean, they were fighting old guys like Baron von Raschke with the claw, and some of those, and Crusher Blackwell, a big old fat guy, and but I mean they were just going through. They were just too good for the AWA. And back then nobody looked like them in wrestling. I mean, everybody like the
No,
Ultimate Warrior came out later and Sting, but nobody was like that. They're like, and I remember when I was getting into wrestling, you know what their theme song used to be before when they were in AWA?
I don't.
It was Iron Man
Oh
by
yeah,
Black.
that's right.
And I remember there was another band from they were called called the Fabulous Freebirds, and they were Michael
Yep.
Hayes. And they came out in these big. They were from Georgia, and they'd come out in these big Confederate flags. Probably piss a lot of people off nowadays, but that's what heels
Yeah.
did. And they were talking shit because they went up there. They were down here with the Von Erichs and stuff like that, and they were up there, and he was saying, "Hey man, you want to fucking put Black Sabbath Iron Man against Bad Street USA any fucking time? I'll see you in the ring," and it's all wrestling. And I was talking to my buddy, "Hey, that song Blacks," I mean, because granted, I'm in this, Christian nationalist home, so even looking at a girl was I go, "Hey, you ever heard the song by Black Sabbath?" And I knew who Ozzy was before I knew who Black Sabbath was. Weird. And I go, "Hey, you know that song Black Sabbath, or that song Iron Man by Black Sabbath?" Yeah, he played it for me. I was like, "Holy shit. Warriors are even cooler now." Because that fucking just that look that he had. I mean, he had that mohawk. And I always thought Hawk was a little bit too buff, but I always thought Animal would have made a good solo guy because I thought he had the perfect body. He had the perfect look and he had the perfect body. And you have a lot of wrestlers that copied his look. And
Yeah.
but yeah, but that man, he was one of my favorites. And the Road Warriors pretty much got me into Black Sabbath and more of my downfall. Some people would say,
Well, and I will say what little I knew him. I didn't know him well, but I knew him.
yeah,
We've been drunk together a few times. Um, but he was a hell of a nice guy in college. I don't know what happened afterwards because people change, but he seemed like a hell of a nice guy in college. I didn't know the other one. I didn't know Hawk. He was kind of from a different area, well, similar area, but he was a different kind of guy. He had some other kind of issues going on.
yeah, he has a big time drug issues to where he got his life together and he got straight. And I saw the interview with it was like a thing on the Road Warriors, was a documentary on him. I think he had a couple of sons that played in the NFL.
Yeah,
He,
they went and
uh,
played at Ohio State and in the pros.
yeah,
It was Joe Jr. or something.
yeah. When I was up in Ohio State, I was telling my mom's boyfriend about that. It's like, oh, so and so, his dad was a wrestler, and he's like, oh, I didn't know that. And it's like, hey, I know my wrestling. But yeah, when he died and everything, and he died not too he died a few years ago, but I
Yeah,
would always kind of keep up with him. He would do like different interviews and stuff like that and would talk about it. Seemed like a nice guy, seemed like the kind of guy you'd like to meet. But yeah, that Jeep Swinson, man, he was just a big old monster. But that's the way they were in the 80s. And that's why a lot of them are dead now, is because they were so roided out
yeah.
that, I mean, it sucks, but what the hell, but I mean, I think, that whole got me into heavy metal and eventually led me to my other story. But I want to hear more about you. I want to hear more about the people around Prince and stuff like that. You never got to meet Prince, right?
No, no, I talked to him on the phone one time. I'll tell you that story, but I want to tell you about another professional fighter who may have been the most famous person in the world at the time that I met.
Okay.
Most famous person. There was a boxing match going on, and I love boxing. Okay. And the boxing match is a guy by the name of Scott Ledoux, who's kind of a journeyman fighter out of Minnesota. He did a couple of things, and he was fighting Larry Holmes, who was the champion, and they're going to fight in Minnesota for whatever reason. Larry Holmes was a character. And he was probably, he didn't come off as the smartest guy in the world, but when all is said and done, he was the smartest guy with his money. He's still very wealthy today because he did all the right things. Anyway, I'm sitting in this press conference and it's interesting. It's at a place called the Registry Hotel, which isn't there anymore. My brother worked at the Registry Hotel, so he was there too. Huge boxing fan. All right. So we're sitting there listening to Larry Holmes go on and on about his shit. And he wasn't a very articulate guy. And then all of a sudden I hear a scuffle behind me. There's people behind me. I look back and I don't see anything. And you go a little further. And then all of a sudden we hear, the champ is here. And I look back and there's Muhammad Ali looking around the pillar, taunting Larry Holmes. He goes, the champ is here. The people's champ is here. and, and everybody turns and looks at Muhammad Ali, and nobody cares about Larry Holmes and Scott Ledoux at this point. Everybody's crowding around him, and it was just funny watching him. He's going out playing to the crowd and stuff like that. And there's this young couple standing there. The young woman is beautiful, just stunning, great body, great face, everything like that. And the guy with her uh, isn't a big guy, but he's built. He's built. I watch Ali walk up to, and I only talked to him for a second because everybody wanted to talk to him. But before I talked to him, he walked up to this guy with the girl, and he looks at the guy and goes, "What would you do if I just took your girl?" And the guy says, "Well, I don't know." And the girl says the absolute wrong thing. She goes, "You better watch out, because he's a boxer too." And
Oh,
Ali looks at him and he goes, "Oh, you a boxer?" And he goes, "Well, yeah, I'm a boxer." And he says, "You any good?" He says, "Well, I think I'm pretty good." He goes, "How's your defense?" He goes, "What?" He goes, "How's your defense?" He goes, "Well, pretty good." And he goes, "Defend this." And he threw about 20 punches, never hit him, but
yeah,
in and around his face. He goes, "You're going to need some work if you're going to fight me." And of
yeah.
course, it was all a joke. He hugged the woman, hugged the guy, and they took off, and it was fine. And I talked to him briefly, and I don't think he gave me a serious answer on anything, but I didn't give a fuck. It was Muhammad Ali, for fuck's sake.
He got a lot of his character from an old wrestler called Gorgeous George. That
Gorgeous
was
George, absolutely. He admitted to that.
Well, yeah, he's done interviews with him. I mean, a lot of people were like talking because they put him in the WWE Hall of Fame because he was at first WrestleMania and he was actually, the ring guy when in there. But
Right.
yeah, he talks about Gorgeous George, and it's like, and then you look at somebody like that, then you look at a Ric Flair. I mean, you got to have that, you got to have the fight, but you also got to have the personality, or you just people forget about you. I mean, and Muhammad Ali, he has one of the best sayings that I've always and goes with. He goes, "If you're the same man at 50 that you are at 30, you haven't learned anything." And I
Right.
was like Muhammad Ali, and you see him in like a lot of movies. Like I'm watching Godfather Harlem with Forrest Whitaker. It's about one of
Yeah.
those monsters, and it's kind of based on a true story. But it's got like Malcolm X and everything. But it's got Cassius Clay, and people are like, "Who's Cassius Clay?" Well, that's who became Muhammad Ali. So yeah, Muhammad Ali.
Well,
That's
Muhammad Ali was a pretty decent guy and a pretty humble guy, actually, in spite of it. But he just understood what the wrestlers understood, the value of becoming a heel. He knew how to sell tickets, and that's what he was doing. And a lot of people after him have tried to tried to do the same thing. Because I know my brother had a couple interactions with Ali. He's got a glove signed by him. My brother was really sick at one point and sent him a letter. Ali took the letter and signed a note below it and sent it back to him. And he was a pretty decent guy overall, in spite of what his image looked like.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people too they get real upset because I mean you have that in the media too. There's an ESPN guy. His name's Stephen A. Smith, and a lot of people can't stand him. And he rags on the Cowboy fans and everything because they keep losing. I get exactly what he's doing. He's doing the old Muhammad Ali bit. He's being.
Exactly.
I tell you what, you may not like the guy, but you ain't gonna fucking forget him. I mean, A lot of people hate that guy. I don't mind him. I think he's a blowhard, but I mean, he don't bug me none. I mean, you got to kind of just, chill a little bit and not take everything so damn seriously, like Muhammad Ali. So,
Well, and that's why whenever you're watching TikTok or YouTube or something like that, when you see a creator who's popular, just because it's what you see doesn't mean who they really are. You got to take it with a grain of salt and such. But you were talking about the Prince stuff, and a lot of people I work with Prince. Like for example, there was this girl I represented. If her name was Jermaine, she could sing like fucking Aretha Franklin. She was this little cute girl, but she could sing like crazy. A little bit of a diva. She's since got older, got religion, got kids, and she's a wonderful lady now. But she was hard to deal with at that point. And she had a band. Now, one of the band members was a guy named Keith. He went on to do something. He won a Grammy for something, so he was good. Another guy named Billy, who was a great guitarist, who got some international renown in this band that never went anywhere. But the drummer of the band, good guy, friend of mine. I see him from time to time. His name is Kurt. Kurt was the drummer and also the diva's boyfriend at the time. Well, they ended up disbanding this band, and Kurt went on to work with Prince. Not only did he work with Prince, he became Prince's best friend. He was his best man at his wedding. And toward the end of his life, you remember just prior to him dying, he was carried off a plane in Indiana or something because he needed to stop quickly. That was Kurt who carried him.
oh, wow.
And so, and I believe it was Kurt that found him
Wow.
at Paisley Park when he passed away. But then Kurt got all kinds of heat, like Kurt somehow made Prince take these drugs and it's his fault. They always want to blame somebody. And I didn't know Prince personally, but I knew a lot of people that knew Prince. Nobody told Prince what the fuck to do. Nobody told Prince what not to do. Prince did what he did, and that was no two ways about it. But it's interesting when I talk to Kurt now, he doesn't really want to talk about that stuff. I'd love to interview him, but he doesn't want to talk about it at all. And I understand that. I mean, he went through some shit because people were blaming him for stuff that was ridiculous. But that's kind of how close I was with people
Yeah.
connected to Prince.
Yeah. Yeah. My encounter wasn't that close to Prince, but it has a lot to do with, we were talking about OJ lately. So I know we're a few minutes away from the getting towards the end of the show, but I want to share mine. And this has been the highlight of my life. Not ever, but that was meeting you, Mike, and doing these podcasts. Of course.
Sure.
Um, I was a kid, about 1989 was it? So I was like 16 or 17, and I'd been into rock for a while and stuff. And at the time, we all know Led Zeppelin and stuff, but at the time, one of the biggest bands that came out, they're a band that had been around a while, and they spawned off from David Coverdale. He was in Deep Purple, as like I mentioned that to you.
Right.
After, for a while, they have the Purple album and stuff. Well, they got running, and they were like a Led Zeppelin clone. They were a lot like Zeppelin, which a lot of people look down upon, but hell, Led Zeppelin ripped everybody off, so share the wealth,
Yeah.
right? They had some good run, and it wasn't until like 1987 when they released and what Coverdale did, like he did "Here I Go Again," and that was a big song that was really put them on the map. And a lot of the reason that Whitesnake got put on a map was, if you remember her, she was a redhead. Her name was Tawny Katane. She was a
Yeah.
redhead dancing on
She was
cars.
hot.
She was gorgeous. And but yeah, she did that, and they eventually got married. They had a big album and everything, and took off. And Whitesnake became like the David Coverdale called them the UN because they had like a guy from another every country in the band. They were like so many people besides. But what Coverdale did is when he recorded that album, he fired all the guys because he didn't think they were pretty enough for TV.
Oh, wow.
Tawny Katane, she had been around. She dated this guy from Rat, and she's on a album cover of theirs, and she was known. She was also in a movie called Witchboard with Tom Hanks. No, take that back. She was in Bachelor Party with Tom Hanks, and
Right.
she was in a course in a of course all your friends go, hey man, check out Witchboard. Gets naked, and that's what we did before the internet.
Got to
And
do what you got to do.
yeah, so they get married. She's a gorgeous redhead, just hot as hell, hottest chick in the planet, if you ask me at the time. Next to Nancy Wilson from Heart, which that's another story. And my buddy was like, they were coming to town. They were coming to town with Bad English, which was like a Journey, Gods and Journey, and John Waite, the Missing You guy, and the Babies. And it's like, okay, cool. So I bought a ticket. It's like, I want to go. I want to make sure I go. It's my first concert, and I paid $15 for my Whitesnake ticket. And this is 1989, a long fucking time ago. Of course, a shirt
A
costs
lot of
20.
money then.
And he goes, well, I got a friend of mine, my friend of my mom's, she knows Tawny Kitane's mom. I'm like, really? He goes, yeah, so we may get to go backstage and meet the band. I'm like, oh, no shit. So I'm excited about this. Of course, I'm waiting for, months. So it's spring break, comes up to go see it. My first concert, I'm all excited. So there's this guy that I see at concerts all the time, or I see wearing concert t-shirts all the time. And he's always back. I see, and I heard he goes backstage and everything like that. He was telling me about it. Well, me and my buddies, we're all a bunch of geek. Him and his brother, we're just kind of geek guys. We're sitting there waiting for him, and I see the guy there from high school, right? And he goes, and he's always bragging about getting to go backstage. Well, she fucking comes down and gets us, the three of us, or the five of us, because the couple were there, takes us back. Well, come with me. And he's like, what the fuck? How did you get that thing? But somebody saw Tawny Katane come and get me. It's like, I mean, fuck yeah, one of the most, her and David Coverdale were two of the nicest people. David Coverdale, if you ever follow him on, he's on Twitter. The dude's a fucking riot. He cracks jokes and everything. But Whitesnake, what they got me is that they were British and they were so fucking short. And they had all
Yeah.
this fucking hair. Steve Vai, who was a guitar player, he was there, but he just walked out. And they were sitting there and talking to us, and she was cool as shit. She was there, and I got a t-shirt signed by her only. It was a Whitesnake t-shirt. Fuck the band. I want to get her to sign it. Of course, I didn't have a camera. Like people ask, we didn't have a camera. It's like we didn't have cell phones back then. Two of the nicest people. And this is the time Slip of the Tongue came out. And she had blonde hair. It was
Really?
like, okay, she looks good. Tawny Katane had blonde hair. Well, it came out a few years later. Your buddy was banging her when she was married to Coverdale.
Oh,
Tawny Katane.
who's the guy?
OJ was banging Tawny Katane.
Jesus Christ.
So you were
My
right
guy.
to keep your girlfriend away from that guy. She was married to David Coverdale, and I'm sure David Coverdale wasn't the same. But when you're married to Tawny Katane, would you really fuck around? Well, he liked blondes. And that was in the trial, came out because my mom told me, hey, your girl's in the OJ trial. I'm like, what? My girl. And he wanted her to dye her hair blonde. So that's why she went blonde. So she's doing these fucking Whitesnake videos and she's blonde because OJ wanted her to be blonde. So your guy you met, Kevin Bacon thing, he was banging Tawny Katane at the time. And he was probably banging a lot of chicks at the time, like when he was married and everything. But it came out in the trial that that's why she had her hair blonde because she was one of his mistresses. So world's small
Wow.
world.
I got to be honest with you. If I'm dating Tawny Katane, the color of her hair is the last thing I'm thinking fucking about. As we're getting close to the end here, I want to tell my famous talking to Prince on the phone story. I've told it many times,
You got to hear
but I
that.
think it's so I have a studio and I'm starting to get acts coming in wanting me to represent them. And I don't really know what I'm doing. And some people are talented and some people are shit. He's not a kid. He was about my age at the time, but he acted like a child. His name was Chaz. Now, he was legitimately Prince's cousin. He had virtually no talent at all, very little talent. But he had a satchel full of cassette tapes
Mhm.
from when he was in the band with his cousin, Prince, when he was in Grand Central, which was their first band. And the reason this interested me because there was a another album that came out by a guy by the name of Pepe Willie, who recently died, who worked with Prince a lot. And he came out with 94 East, which was a lot of music where Prince was involved and stuff. And he sold a lot of records. I thought, well, this is interesting. This guy's got this old music. Must have some legitimacy. And he'd gotten to know some writer publisher in Los Angeles. He did some interviews to help this guy write a book about Prince, one of the early books about Prince, not, when he was just starting. And his name was Stephen Ivory. He said, if you help me get a deal, Stephen Ivory in Los Angeles will help us. Okay. And I said, okay, cool. So I call Stephen Ivory, get a good relationship with this guy. We become friends long after this whole situation just blows up in our face. Stephen Ivory set us up with a meeting with a guy named John McClain, who was at A&M Records, and we went out to Los Angeles. Now, John McClain, he was an arrogant fuck. He was an arrogant fuck. And so we go meet him, and we've got a whole series of songs for a potential album listening, and we're listening to it. I'm sitting there with the artist and John McClain. John McClain ended up being one of the people controlling Michael Jackson's publishing deal after, which we were connected to ultimately. But he's going through the thing. He goes, this song's shit. This is too esoteric. This is bullshit. What were you thinking doing here? And he came across one song. He goes, I like that song. He said, I'm going to give you a deal, but I'm not going to give you an album deal because back in those days, a 12-inch single was a big deal. He goes, I'm going to give you one song. We'll see how that goes. So he comes back and we're going to do all the deals and stuff. And Chaz is in the studio working on something. I don't know what. I'm sitting in my office. We're waiting for the contract to come. Okay. We're waiting for the contract to come. And I'm sitting in my office and I get a phone call. And this person on the other end, another young musician type, calls me up and says, let me talk to Chaz. I go, he's in the studio. I'm not interrupting him. So let me talk to Chaz. I said, who the fuck do you think you are? I'm not going to let you talk to fucking Chaz. Fuck you. And I go, who is this? He goes, it's Prince. I go, oh, it's Prince, huh? Jesus Christ. Sorry, I'm not bowing and scraping to you. Now, you got to remember, Prince was well known and famous at the time, but he wasn't a legend yet. He was just starting to break with Purple Rain and all this stuff. And so, but I didn't think it was Prince. Why would Prince call about this dumb fuck? So I'm ripping this guy. And finally I go get Chaz. I said, Chaz, talk to this motherfucker. Get him off the phone. And so they're talking, and I can see Chaz is kind of taken aback. He's taking an ass whooping over the phone is what he's doing. And he gives me the phone back. I go, who was that? He goes, it was Prince. I go, holy fuck. I just told Prince to fuck off. But what it ended up being was that the reason we got this deal on that one song is because my buddy Chaz stole that song from Prince and Prince found out about it. That's a whole different story. That explodes into a bunch of bullshit. But I never met Prince. I saw him many times in Minnesota. I saw him film his movie in front of my building. It was right there. I was kitty corner from First Avenue. I had watched everything from in front of my building. And but I did talk to him on the phone. And just to say right here, it didn't go well.
Yeah, that's what I want to do. Because like, the story about, the Alice in Chains thing and me not knowing who he was and you not knowing Prince, obviously he wasn't in front of you, but that was worth it right there. What was the song? Did it become famous later or that he stole?
No, no, I don't think it ever came out. And it was kind of a good poppy tune. I don't know what the lyrics uh, were meant to be with Prince when he wrote it. Now, he might have wrote this way back when they were Grand Central, but the song, as Chaz had done it, it was called "Funny You Should Call," and it was kind of a hooky tune. It could have been a hit,
Well,
but it never happened. Well, and the reason it never happened was when he got the call from Prince, shortly after that, I got a call from John McClane, who was the record company that was going to give us this deal. I go, John, I haven't seen the contracts yet. He goes, yeah, well, we got a problem we got to deal with. I go, what's that? Because I didn't know this whole story. And he says, turns out Chaz stole that song from Prince. So I
Oopsie.
get off the phone with him. I get in a huge argument in the studio with him, and he's freaking the fuck out. And he bolts out of there. And I literally don't see him again, ever, ever.
Wow.
I never see the guy again. And he took a few instruments of mine with him, and I couldn't find him to do that. 2 weeks later, John McClane calls me up and he says, so, Mike, what's up? I go, what are you talking about? What's up? He says, well, what's going on with Chaz? Are we going to do this thing? He says, I said, dude, he stole the song. It's over with. And John McClane says to me, and it taught me a lesson about the music business. He says, I don't care if he stole the song. Just let us in on the bullshit. We'll put the fucker out and worry about lawsuits later. I
That
go,
song, that song make a nice song because Prince died without a will, and he never wanted a lot of his stuff in the vault released. But now they're releasing a lot of stuff he didn't want released, so that could be on there. That could be like it's like Jimi Hendrix every like couple of years. Oh, we found an album in the attic. It's like
yeah.
you're gonna release shit off that forever. But yeah, I mean, I knew this would be good. Mike, with your history like that. But another podcast about the me not knowing who somebody is and you telling somebody pretty much to fuck off. What else can you expect, man? I mean,
I think you would
that's what you
expect that
get.
out of me, though.
That's what you get on taking a break with Gen X and Boomer. I mean, you get a unknown to a fuck you. And I would say if I was going to steal a song by Prince, it would be Darling Nikki because that is a fucking masterpiece. I was warned against that song so much. It's like, oh, it's evil. I was like, yeah, but it fucking sounds great.
Yeah. No, it was great. I love that song too. A lot of his later stuff, I didn't, I was kind of out of the music thing and I didn't really pay attention to it. But some of that older stuff, 1999, um, Purple Rain, Round the World in a Day, he had some great songs. There's no
We gotta,
question about it.
we gotta do I know we gotta wrap things up, but we gotta do a show on Prince because when he died, there was talk about him dying in an elevator, and supposedly he says in the elevator in one of his songs I forget what the name is, but there's all these Prince conspiracies, like when somebody dies. So we got to do a podcast on Prince and just recognize the man because he's definitely one of my favorites. And speaking of favorites, Mike, you're one of my favorites as well. So we're getting ready to wrap up the taking a break. And if
Taking
you
a break. I just
you
wanted
don't
to say
have
one thing
this,
about that Prince death thing. I remember when it happened. He was in Chanhassen at Paisley Park. And
yeah.
my brother told me about this, and I went to check it out to see if it was true. For a period of time, short period of time, the county in which he died had posted in the website pictures of Prince's body
Oh wow.
in the elevator. And I
Wow.
went
Oh
to look
yeah.
at it because I was curious, and then I looked at it and I go, oh, fuck, I didn't want to see that. That's not something I needed.
Yeah, we gotta do that on like death conspiracies, like did Elvis live? Because there's a lot of got a lot of shit on that man. I don't think he died in '77, but we'll leave that for another show. All righty, my friend. Till next
Paul
time.
McCartney did not die, though.
Yeah, I heard that too, and yeah, yeah, that's another good episode coming up about conspiracies because it seems like when somebody dies, it's like yeah, they're gone or they're in some island with like DB Cooper. So we're gonna
In
wrap it
fact,
up and
I'm hoping since you're younger than me, if I die before you, I expect you to come up with some conspiracy theories about me living on some island in the middle of nowhere on the riches I've made from fucking TikTok.
yeah, well, when you leave me that money, I'll just weekend at Bernie your ass. So I get a buddy of mine. We'll just drag you around, and that this is the boomer man right here. Bernie ain't got nothing on you, brother.
We stuffed that motherfucker. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, wrap it up for us and we'll get on out of here.
Yep, we'll see you next time, and thanks for joining us on Taking a Break with Gen X Jace and Boomer 2.